So once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Just to let you know that this call is being recorded and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel. Okay. So with that, today we have a topic: how you can create a truly private Azure Batch infrastructure. And we will talk about some of the recent updates that have happened that made it possible. So and that's we will be our topic of discussion. Uh, sorry, here is the quick agenda. We will do a quick overview of the batch service. What does it do? And then we will talk about the updates and, of course, do a little bit of demo. And hopefully, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Place them in the chat window or open your mic and ask the question. Okay. So first of all, what is Azure Batch service? Azure Batch is Microsoft platform service for running parallel jobs for HPC computing. Basically, what it allows you to do is don't without worrying about installing all the cluster infrastructure and all that, it provision all that for you. You can pick your own type of compute that you want to do, and um, basically, uh, that's makes your life easy in terms of creating this entire infrastructure on your behalf. And the thing is, there is no cost as such associated with the um, batch service. You pay for the compute, whatever you use, and you can scale the compute up and down and all that. So that's that. I just want it for you to focus for a minute on this diagram. So you have your Azure Batch instance provision in Azure Cloud. Then you spin up compute pools in your VM, or sorry, in your virtual network, and Azure Batch service communicate to that. There's a storage account as well. If you want to store resource file that your jobs, your task will be using, so you can you can access them from that storage account, and at the same time you can put outputs from your jobs into the storage account as well. So that's kind of a high level diagram how batch service works. You push the job to the batch nodes, picks pools, nodes in the pools, which are just the VM, pick those job up, process it, and put the data back out if there is any output, and you want it to be in the storage account. Okay, so pretty simple and straightforward. So why we first of all why we are talking about a entirely private model, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not making a recommendation here. There are certain customers or type of customers, I should say. For example, heavily regulated industries, large customers, customer with very strict security, privacy, and compliance requirement. They don't want any public access to their cluster. And before these updates, your Azure Batch, you have to access it over public internet. Your VMs have a public IP, and and you have to open egress to storage. And for those type of customers, this was this was not something that they can use. So it is to address that type of scenario. So if you have a customer, or if your organization is looking for a private network connectivity model for Azure Batch, now it is possible because of the updates that we're going to talk about. First of that is the Azure Simplified Communication model. So this is the model. So there are two models. Classic, which started in that batch service was communicating to the compute nodes. In the simplified model, basically compute nodes are asking batch service, and that simplifies things a lot. Okay, and we'll see. Look at the two sides. On the left hand side, we have the okay. Sorry, this should be uh, this is a typo, and I'm really sorry for it. This should be classic. Okay, so sorry. So they have two type of models. On the left-hand side, classic, as you can see here, you have to have outbound to storage account. And that is, for the data exfiltration concern, that is a no-no for a number of large organizations. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, you have the simplified communication model. There is no inbound. So if you have your compute nodes running in a pool, in a VNet, in a subnet, you can lock down all inbound, and outbound is only to the service tag of batch, Azure Batch. Okay, so that's the thing. That's very powerful, and we will take a look at when we combine this simplified communication model with the private connectivity and um, the uh, pools without any public IP address, that will further simplify this diagram. I mean this architecture. Okay, so now that's one thing. Second thing is ability to privately connect to Azure Batch. So you can now connect privately to Azure Batch. So let's say that you have an Azure Batch account provision. You can create a private endpoint and in a VNet, and if that VNet is connected to on-prem through ExpressRoute or site-to-site VPN, now you can communicate to Azure Batch, to submitting job, getting the results, all that through through that private endpoint. So without going over the internet. So that's one part of thing. The second thing is there are two private endpoints that you can create. One is a batch account. The second one is node management. If you see in the last slide, you do node management, do outbound, you have to open an NSG. But let's think about this. If your pool doesn't have a public IP, how are you going to communicate outside? Because we all know for an Azure VM to communicate outside, it has to have a public IP, or it has to have behind a public IP, a load balancer, or it has to have a what we call a NAT, some sort of. So that's how it communicates to over the internet. But if it doesn't have a public IP, how do you do that? In that case, that node management private endpoint comes into picture. You will drop that private endpoint in the same VNet where your pools are, and they will be able to communicate through it. And you can lock down all outbound access at all if you want to. So basically, no outbound access to the internet, no inbound access, and this creates a completely private Azure Batch model or Azure Batch infrastructure for you. So then, no connectivity. Yeah, you can open ports if you want to if you want to access some stuff, but it's all in your control. So at this point, any questions? Okay. So with all of that, here is the architecture. Okay, so you have the Azure cloud. In that, you have provision an instance of Azure Batch. It is there is an Azure Key Vault you're using. Just wanna for reference, you are using Key Vault for storing your key that you're gonna use to for encryption in Azure Batch. So and that communication is anyways happening on trusted services model and with managed identity. And then you have a storage account, and we will come to that in a second. But look in this diagram. First of all, I have created two private IP for Azure Batch. One is for batch account, and the other one is the node management. Just remember the last picture, two private endpoints. And then you have provision Azure Batch pools in the second subnet. Okay. And I have an NSG placed on it, so there is no outbound communication to the internet. I'm blocking all that. Um, and both of these pool, since there is and they don't have any public IP, they are now communicating through the node management to for with a simplified communication model. And this can only happen with the simplified communication model. It's not possible with the classic one. Okay, so that's that. And then to get the resource files from the storage account, I have created a private endpoint to the blob store, dropped it in the same subnet, and the nodes are communicating through the managed identity to get any resource file. Just want to give you a heads up. If you are planning to use application packages with Azure Batch, with this type of model, where you are want to place the Azure storage account as a private endpoint, this will not work. Okay, but it's not a blocker. Instead of using application packages, you can use a startup task, and that task should be able to download the files. Okay, let me take a step back. You use application packages, and they are installed on your nodes to set them up. So let's say that you are running some Python jobs and you want to set up Python or some packages on it. You will set up application packages and will do it. Okay. But in order to download application packages, your storage account has to have public access. Once again, if you are making everything private, that doesn't fit well in your architecture. Okay. So in that case, what we do is we use startup task. It does a kind of it's a workaround where you are still able to download the resource file from Azure Blob Storage over a private IP and run commands and basically do all the setup just like you will do through application packages. So everybody with me? So now with this, everything is private. Even storage connectivity is private, no public access. Okay. Any questions? I know it's a kind of a lot of information to digest, so please feel free to ask. And once again, I am not recommending this architecture. I'm just sharing with you if you have come across those type of customers, because I have come across those type of customers which have very strict privacy and compliance requirement or from highly regulated industries which are looking for entirely private implementation of Azure Batch. Okay. Good. So let's look at a quick demo, and I'm gonna start with, first of all, let me create an Azure Batch account. Okay. And what we do is batch service, and we go in here and resource group. What is the name? We can call it in ZPL batch 001. And then it will ask you for a storage account. What is the location? And here's the thing, I will come to the storage account second. First, you want to go in here, and I'm going to use assign managed identity, and I'm going to use use a user subscription model. So you can use a batch service model. In that, um, all your VMs will be allocated through your batch service. So you will build through batch service. In user subscription model, your VM will be tied to the quota for your subscription. Okay. Just keep in mind, there is no difference in billing. Okay. Your billing will still stay the same. I mean, no matter you get the nodes from compute, because you are paying for a SKU of a VM. Doesn't matter it come from batch service or come from user subscription. So it's just based on your kind of, okay, yeah, I want to do this or that. So that's all there is to it. Then if you use user subscription model, you have to select a key vault. So I can select a key vault from here, and hold on, I think I have to. Oh, I selected the wrong region. Let me do South Central. Okay, and that's that. Then we can select a key vault, and that's it. And of course, I mean, it will say this is a key vault URL. So basically, um, it needs that like passwords. It will use that key vault to access that. And I say agree, access, and then go on networking. I can select networks and all. We can do it later on. Okay, now let's go back to the first slide. I need to select a storage account, and I can select one storage account that is here. And just keep in mind, I can say batch account managed identity. You should always use batch account managed identity. Okay, that is always helps. And also, you should be using a user assigned managed identity for all your node identity reference, because just keep in mind, batch account identity is tied to the batch account. Nodes cannot use that. You have to have a Azure managed user assigned managed identity for the nodes to use. Okay, so that's that. So let's pick it up, and that's it. Once you have all that information, you are ready to create the account. Here's the thing, since we have um, don't have much time, I'm not gonna create that. I already have um, an account created. I wanna show you that. So this is my account. First of all, let's look at the storage account. It is using batch account managed identity. This is the user assigned managed identity that I have that nodes will use. And in terms of um, encryption, I am using customer managed key based encryption. This is my key vault. And let me take you to the key vault. Here is my key vault. As you can see here, um, the only a public IP that I'm allowing is my router IP address. Okay, that's the only one that is able to connect. And as you can see here, that's the only address that is everything is through allow Microsoft Trusted Services. Okay, so that's that. So encryption is happening, all that. Okay, now let's come to the meat of things. Let's see on the networking side of it. Okay, on the networking side, once again, selected networks, and this is the outbound address of my router, so that I'm just allowing it to that. And for the private access, I am using node management PE. Okay, I'm not using a batch account PE because it's just to submit jobs. I'm submitting those through my through the using the firewall of through my PC, so that should suffice. But this node management PE is dropped in the same VNet where I have created the tool. Okay, so let's go in and let's see the experience. First of all, any questions? Okay. So then let's go in and let's see an experience of creating a pool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new pool too, and I'm going to assign a user assigned identity to it. Okay, so all of the nodes will get that identity. Okay, so that's that. That's part is done. And for the image, I'm going to use, and by the way, we are not going in depth in the how batch service work and how you can run it. This is strictly on the network infrastructure side of it. So we are just going to use this one, and we're going to just select everything that is a default. I'm just going to use one node, and then I'm going to use a start task. Okay, so I'm just going to do enable, and I'm going to keep all the things as default, and I'm going to enter a command line here. Uh, and here is the command line that I'm entering. And for the resource file, I'm going to go to a storage blob. Okay, this is very important. Just keep in mind, whatever link you provide, it's going to go access that link. Okay, it's not going to use any credential unless until you specify. So either you use that, first of all, either you make your storage blob publicly accessible. That's one thing. You should not do that. Second, you should use SAS signature. That's another option. The third one, which is the best one, is to use the pool user assigned identity. I think you should use that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go and pick this file, batch resource, select it. It's going to come in here, and I'm going to provide an identity reference. Remember, that's the identity we assigned, the user assigned managed identity. So now it's going to use this identity to access that particular resource file. Okay, submit. I mean, that's that. And then, very, very important, as we come down here, use simplified communication model. I think the default is simplified, but just to make absolutely clear, use simplified. And as you can see, we are not going to be using application packages because um, we have to we have to open the storage account, and that doesn't work with our architecture with an entirely private batch infrastructure. Okay, then I'm going to select a pool. This is my pool, and I'm going to select no public IP address. Okay, and yes, I have Windows Server licenses. With that, I'm going to start this, create this pool. Okay, so let's refresh it. So this pool is being created, and it will take a few minutes before the pool is created and nodes are ready. In the meantime, I'm going to go over the pool that I already have, and it's right now idle. So let's submit a job over there. And and before I show you that, let me go in here in the storage account and show you. So this is the storage account which is tied to the batch. It's in the same region, and storage account networking, same thing. I'm just allowing my outbound IP address from the router. There is a private endpoint for blob. It's in the same VNet where I've been running my pools. That's all. So it's able to now communicate to that. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. Alap, do you see any questions in the chat window, man?
No, was gonna say nothing on the chart so far, Navi.
Okay, thank you, sir. So let's go in here. Let's look at the pool, and let's see if that pool is ready. So we go to the pool 2. It's still starting. If we go to the nodes, this is the node, and let's say what is the start task info, and still there's nothing there. It's still, I think, starting the pool. So let's go back to our pools. It takes a few minutes, but in any case, we are at the node pool. It's idle, so everything is now set up. We have the pool that we need, and we can now submit a job. Okay, so now let's do that. And by the way, I'm a .NET guy. You can use CLI, PowerShell, Portal, C Sharp, Python. I mean, to you submit jobs. I have a .NET application that I'm using, and let me bring it here, and that I'm gonna use to submit this job. What it does is it adds 3 resource files, submit the jobs, and the then job will get the file downloaded and do something on it. Basically, it's just outputting the file. That's all there is to it. It's not doing anything. The goal is not here to show how sophisticated Azure Batch can uh, sophisticated job Azure Batch can process is just how the network infrastructure. So let me start this up. And here we go. It's uploading file. So let's take a look at our storage account quickly. This is our storage account, and this is the containers. As you can see, there is a new container input, and there are 3 files. Okay, so these are the files that are uploaded, ready for Azure Batch job to use. Okay, so let's go in here in our Visual Studio and let's continue running the job. And what it's gonna do is um, it's gonna get the pool and then start creating the job. So let's let it create the job here. And okay, so now let's look at the Azure, our Azure Batch, and let's look at the jobs. Here we go. There is a job there. Okay, so this is all of those are completed since they were just outputting stuff. and we can look at it. What was the task? And they all completed, so we can check standard out. This is the output. So you see, it is able to download the files over a private connectivity, entirely private, no public IP address, and to entirely private Azure Batch infrastructure. Okay, and if we go back here, it says, hey, you want to delete the input data? Yes, delete the input data. You want to delete the job? Yes, job is complete, so we can delete it. We don't want to delete the pool at the moment. So that's that, and that's pretty much done. So basically, with this entirely private Azure Batch infrastructure, we just completed a job. So let's go back to um, the pool that we were creating. Let's go back here and let's take a look at the state of the pool. Oh yeah, so perfect. So this is the output, and this is the start task info. So this is it was succeeded. So it was able to pull the file. Okay, and we can go back here and so that's basically this is the end to end. You when you set up the infrastructure and you run all jobs. So I just want to show it to you that though yes, with this model we cannot use applications, but still we have the start task at our disposal, able to get data from a private storage account, basically a blob store with private connectivity, and it can run command lines on it, and that's all there is to it. So we have 2 more minutes. Any questions?
Nothing on the chat, Naveed.
Okay, great, folks. So I hope you find this content useful, and thank you very much for joining, and hope to see everyone next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. And have a great weekend, folks.